Hey, welcome back to Liam Locke Gaming. I am Liam Locke, and we are back in the FSX Steam Edition Flight Simulator. Today's flight is in a Boeing 777-300ER, and we are flying a red-eye from Baltimore, Washington International Airport, or BWI if you're a local, to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, France. Special add-on for this evening's flight, we are flying at night, so that'll give a little interesting view to the video here. And also I've added active sky, so we're going to have some live dynamic weather being updated as we fly from BWI to Paris, France. We have got a full plane today. Our flight plan has us with 365 passengers and 20 metric tons of cargo. So between all of that payload and our fuel, we're going to be pretty much full. We want to get things going, so we're in a turnaround state. Basically, I'm simulating we've just arrived at this airport a little while ago, disembarked passengers, got the cargo off in the passengers' luggage, and now we are preparing to reboard passengers and fly our red-eye back to Paris. First thing we want to do here at the gate, now we've got everybody up board, we want to bring up GSX services and go ahead and get our catering service started. And we'll go with the default as they've selected there. And as I've done before, we want to request refueling at the same time. That way the refuel truck is staged and ready to go and comes right behind catering. And now we'll just wait for them to show up. Our scheduled departure tonight, we're shooting for 2300 local time, so about 11 p.m. And currently looks like we've got 10:11 local time, or 2:11 Zulu. You can see there on the clock in the cockpit. So we've got a little bit of time here to get our plane set up, but we've got to get our flight plan programmed into the FMC, and we've got to do our checks. Even though the plane is already started up for us and a lot of switches and settings are in the correct position, we want to just scan over our settings. So I've got my checklist off here to the side. We're going to kind of quickly go through it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about some of these things. I'd like to kind of get this show on the road a little more quickly, but I will go down what I'm checking. So the ADIRU on, good to go. Thrust asymmetry compensation is auto. That's what we expect. We do have our electrical battery turned on and our various electrical settings, which we expect to be in the on position, including the APU generator. However, we are not running the APU right now because this is a turnaround. We've turned the APU off at the gate because we've got ground power connected, and something that I haven't used before. We have our primary external power on and our secondary external power based off of that ground power connection. So we are getting power from the ground, not from the APU or from the engines. GSX is chirping at us, so it looks like the catering vehicles are outside and in position. We'll just verify that here real quick. So they are. We want to get the doors open for them. They need door 2 and 5. Alright, so they're going to go about their business. Go back here and continue with our checklist. The rest of these settings are in their expected default positions, so left and right generators are on for the engines, backup generators are on. However, we're not using any of that power yet, and as I indicated before, the APU is off. Our landing camera system is turned off right now, which is fine. Wipers off. Emergency lights are currently armed, good to go. Window heat turned on. The rest of these settings are in their normal off position. I did turn off the hydraulics after stopping the engines here at the gate. However, I did leave the right electric auto pump enabled, so the right system does have pressure, primarily because that's our parking brake, and I wanted to sustain pressure in that. I don't know what the protocol is, to be quite honest with you, at the gate. I haven't read anything that says you're not supposed to do that, you're supposed to do it, but it seems to be handling it fine under ground power, so I'm going to leave that in place. Spot check our passenger sign, so no electronics is currently on. This replaces the no smoking sign. And then we've got our seatbelt signs. We'll go ahead and turn those on since we're going to be boarding passengers here momentarily. I do have my dome light turned on just to make it a little easier to see inside the airplane since it is nighttime out. And where I have flood panel controls, you'll notice the glare shield flood light is turned on just so I can see the MCP controls a little more clearly. However, we're not using the backlit lights from the individual controls. We are utilizing the master bright control, so that applies across all the backlit instrumentation in the aircraft. That's normal. We're going to leave that in place. Don't need any landing lights on right now. Since it is nighttime outside, I have turned on the navigation, the logo, and the wing lights just to make the plane a little easier to see while we're parked here at the gate, and a little easier for you to see it as well when we go to the external view. Going back up, continuing down our next column. Oh, GSX is chirping at us, so it looks like the catering trucks are done. They want us to go ahead and close the doors, so we'll do that. Alright, those two right doors closed up. Jump out there real quick. They're going to be on their way, and if we spot check GSX as they leave, we can see that our refueling service has been requested, so it should be on its way here momentarily. Go back into our overhead and continue with our checklist. We have our quick test we can do of the cargo and fire. Now this gets, this actually does not only the APU but also does the engines, but in order for us to see that, we need to bring up just a temporary new view. Cockpit, we'll do the pedestal. Here, from inside this view, we can zoom in. So we have our fuel control cutoff switches, as well as the left and right engine fire warning. We'll go ahead and test this system now, and we can see them all light up, so everything looks good to go. So that's our test there is complete. We can get rid of this window. Engines are set in the normal mode. That's perfect. Start set to normal. Auto start is on. We don't have any fuel jettison changes we need to apply. The fuel pumps are on in the left and right wing tanks. However, I've turned the center pumps off because I don't have any current fuel in the center tank, so there's no need for those to be on. We don't have any anti-ice requirements at this point, so those are in the off position. And we don't need our taxi lights or our runway turnoff lights yet, so they're set in the off position as well. If we wanted to spot check our lights, we have our little test switch here we could do that with. Actually, that's the dim position. Let's go to the test position. And this would be the test position where everything lights up, so you can make sure that all your overhead console lights are working. So that's good to go. Last column, air conditioning. We are cooling the equipment. That's good. The Gasper overhead vents above the passenger seats are on. Recirculating fans are on. I've dropped the temperature down in the flight deck and the cabin. I like to run it just a little bit cooler than what it typically comes set at in the mid position. Left and right packs are currently set to auto. They are off because we are not running the APU or the engines at this point, which is normal. Everything else is set. Isolation is set to auto, APU is set to auto, left and right engines are on even though they're not running, which is why we have our off indications. I don't mess with the pressurization right now in the cabin, so there's no changes to make here, and our right wiper is off. We're going to jump down to the first officer's seat and just scan the settings here. So first thing we want to do is get the flight director for the first officer turned on. Make sure that we are displaying the this is set to, what is that, lower center is set correct. Yes, that's where we want to display changes to the ECAS pages that we look at and the synoptics pages. Our EFIS panel, we don't have any minimum to set yet. We haven't received our ATIS weather briefing, so I don't have my current barometric pressure. Looks like currently we should be set at 29902, which is normal. With the weather outside, it was raining earlier. That's probably going to adjust a little bit. We'll find out here in a moment. Currently, our navigation display is set to map. Our range is set to 20 miles. We don't have any changes to make to the VOR ADF switches. Everything else appears to be good to go and normal. We just jump down over here to the side, do a quick check of our oxygen mask. Looks to be good to go. The panel brightness, I have turned up the floodlight over top of the first officer's navigation and primary flight display, so you can see that this console here is lit up a little bit. Just makes it easier to see at night. So just below the 12 o'clock position. All the other settings are left pretty much in their default. I don't have any changes I need to make there. No heater requirements. Time is 2:20. Our departure time is going to be 0300 Zulu, so we've got a little bit of time. Perfect timing. It looks like the fuel truck is outside. A quick spot check, and there he is under the wing. Let me see if I can get over here. Perfect. So he's connected and ready to go. Let's get our fuel and payload taken care of. So for fuel today, according to the flight plan, we are going to need 68.4 metric tons of fuel. So we're going to go ahead and drop that information in. Move the mouse, sorry about that. 68.4 metric tons. That's good. And the fuel truck goes really, really fast. And he's zipping fuel in there. And looks like he is done. It's just that quick with this plane. Not very realistic, but I still like using GSX ground services just for the simulation factor. The realism's a little better with the Airbus than it is with this Boeing 777. I don't know if that's something that I need to kind of tweak or what it is, but I'm good to go with it. So fuel's on board the plane. We can go back in here and take a quick look since we're on the payload screen. If we look at our payload, you can see that I've currently got no passengers, no first class business or economy. We don't have any cargo loaded, no bulk cargo. And our flight plan is where we put in the fact that we are going to be carrying 365 passengers and 20 metric tons of cargo. So our zero fuel weight, let me just go here. Our zero fuel weight is calculated to be 225.6 metric tons. So we want to change this zero fuel weight number here for the payload. This is the easiest way to update this Boeing 777. It'll automatically distribute the passenger and cargo load. It won't match the exact numbers that we have in our flight plan, but that's fine. We're just trying to get the weight balanced out correctly. So 225.6. Drop this in for zero fuel weight, and now you can see I've got a good distribution of passengers as well as cargo and some bulk cargo as well. So that's exactly what we need. Appears to be good. You can see for our load level, we're pretty much full. I mean, we've got a little space there, but 82.8% load level. Alright, and with that said, we'll just bounce back to the checklist and see where I last left off. Jump back over to the first officers. One thing we didn't take a look at, but I'm positive they're set correctly. That's obviously our inboard display is set for the multifunction display is correct. Our FMC is set for auto. That completes the first officer's check. We jump over to the captain's seat, look up at his EFIS panel. Same scenario over here. We're already set for map, 20-mile radius. No barometric pressure reading yet from ATIS. We'll set that here in a moment. All the other settings are pretty much good to go at their current position. We do want to turn on the captain's flight director as well. Get it ready to go. Make sure that our auto thrust left and right are in the arm position, and they are. Our autopilot disengage bar is in the up position, and it is. IAS mock set for IAS, which is normal. We want to be on heading, so we're on heading. That looks good. And we don't have our assigned altitude yet, but I will change this setting here, this little secondary dial from the auto position, which is going to do 100 feet increments, to the thousands. And I don't know what our cleared altitude assignment will be from air traffic control, so we'll just drop that to 8,000 right now and kind of predict we're going to get somewhere in that neck of the woods for takeoff. Same with the captain side, just a real quick check of the oxygen mask. Looks good. I did also adjust the captain's forward panel brightness, turn this middle dial up to about 12 o'clock to give us the overhead lights above the PFD and navigation display. Clock is good to go, tracking our time 2:26. We want to get passengers going, so we've got fuel on board. I want to go ahead and tell GSX to start boarding the plane right now. We'll request boarding. And it's prompting us for how many passengers. No, we're not going to do 582. We're just going to put in 200. Primarily because this could be a lengthy process and I just want to get passengers on board and hopefully get out of the gate and start our pushback on time. Continuing our checks, all the various controls are set to the off position. We don't need those to be on right there. Our brake accumulator pressure is at 3,000 because we're running the right hydraulic system, so that's where that should be. Inboard display is set to multifunction display is good. Heading reference is set to normal. Everything is good on that front. We want to drop down here and just take a quick look at our status page as well. Rather than use the display controls up on the glare shield console, we can do that from the right CDU. So we'll go to status here. Just take a quick look at our hydraulic system so we can see that the left and center system are currently not pressurized, very low pressure. Right is pressurized via electric power, so full 3,000. AP was off, oxygen crew pressure is at 1760. Should be good to go for this flight. And the last check we want to do before we connect up to ATIS is just make sure that our radio, our tuning knob is on, so VHF left is on, and our mic is enabled. So at this point we should be good to go ahead and get our ATIS information.
Baltimore Airport information, Delta 0228 Zulu, wind 302 at 8, visibility greater than 20 miles, sky condition 1,800, scattered, ceiling 3,100, broken, temperature 2.20, altimeter 2976, ILS, runway 28 in use, landing and departing runway 28, VFR aircraft state direction of flight. All aircraft read back full short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact you have Delta.
So we found out that runway 28 is in use. That deviates from our flight plan. Our flight plan called for us to use runway 33 left. So it'll be a slight adjustment to our flight plan when we program it into the FMC. We also got our barometric pressure reading of 2976. So we can go ahead and adjust that right now. So 2976, you'll see here on the altimeter 2976, and on our standby altimeter 2976 is currently set. I can hear in the background passengers are boarding the aircraft, so that's excellent. 2:30 is our time, Zulu time that is, so 10:30 local time. Now we want to start our flight management computer programming. We're going to jump down here, go back to our FMC, verify our plane model, so 777-300 is correct. Our nav data is current. No need for us to set our inertial position because it's already been set. We will drop in our departure airport. We're going to go right out to route. Put in our origin, so BWI airport again. We are going to Charles de Gaulle Airport, so that's LFPG. Today's flight number 3829 Heavy. From here, we're going to go straight to departure arrival. For departure, they indicated runway 28, so we're going to pick runway 28.
Morning.
28 is pretty close directional wise to 34. So I'm going to just stick with the SID that's in my flight plan. We'll see how that does. So we've got SID Swan 3. That's still an option for this runway. And our transition point will be OOD. That's going to be the first VOR on our route. So with that said, we'll click route, go back here, go to our next page, and now we can start to drop in our via airways and our other waypoints. In this particular flight plan, I do have a lot of direct points, so not a lot of specific airways that we're going to be dropping into the system. So 110.20 is the match. Typically it's always the closest one at the top of the list, so that would be correct there. It looks like I'm near the end, so at this point, after this last VOR waypoint, we fly direct to Charles de Gaulle. We've got an assigned runway of 27 left for landing according to the flight plan, and we'll see if we end up flying that or not. So I'm going to go back to departure arrival, go to our arrival, pick runway ILS 27 left. And it says direct, so we don't have a star that we've been assigned and no transition, so I don't need to do anything further with that. Go back to legs here, legs, and then we're going to activate our flight plan. Looks to be good. We want to scroll through our legs and just look for any flight plan discontinuities that might exist. We can see all the additional information. So here we have a route discontinuity, and it's from our last VOR waypoint to our assigned inbound route for runway 27 left. So all I'm going to do is just select that, puts it down here in a scratch pad, and then just stick it up here so it gives us a direct connection, and we'll execute that change. So now we should have no flight plan discontinuity from our last VOR, which we don't. Everything looks good here. Now we want to go ahead and do our init reference.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you? I'm doing good.
So we've already programmed in our zero fuel weight for payload. To recall that here, so we can drop that number in. We're just going to click on the field. 225.6 is correct. We'll drop that in. Automatically shows us our gross weight of 294 currently with fuel on board. Looks like our approximate takeoff weight is going to be 293.4, so that would seem to track. Here at our cost index is going to be 40, and our cruising altitude is going to be 30, flight level 360. So we've got a little warning here. even though that it looks like I'm going to climb to 36.0, according to my flight plan, I'm getting a warning that the max altitude 34.3. Now this is interesting because I do have, for my oceanic crossing, my maximum entry altitude was indicated on the flight plan to be 3,400. So just to kind of correct the warning, we're going to clear this and we're going to change our cruising altitude to be 3,400, or actually 3,300, flight level 330, 33,000 feet across the ocean. I think that will clear this air. And that should be better. And I need to put in my reserves. My reserve fuel is coming in at between our alternate airport and our reserves of 45 minutes flight. Looks like that is going to come in pretty much at an even 10 metric tons. Insufficient fuel. Alright, let's back it out to just my 4.6. How did it say that right now? Have I not taken on all my fuel yet? 68.4 is correct. Let's drop this back to 4.7. Still getting an insufficient fuel warning. Alright, well I'm back and we've lost some time trying to run down why I'm getting insufficient fuel, and it's a good exercise to go through because it's so easy to make a mistake with the FMC, especially when you're dealing with these crazy named waypoints. Because as it turns out, I had to go back and look at my flight plan visually, so the way we're doing that is we have up here on the navigation display. And before I show this, let me just take care of our boarding. GSX has finished boarding the plane, which is fully expected because we were supposed to push back at 0300 Zulu time. We're a little behind schedule. It's not going to be the end of the world. It happens all the time, right? It's normal. So we're going to go ahead and close the entry door. Yep, that's what they want us to do. So I'm going to come back to this here in just a second, just so that thing will stop chirping at us. We're going to close that door. We're going to go ahead and arm these other doors, get them ready to go. We'll arm this door. And we need to also close up our cargo doors. Boarding is complete there. And now let's go back and look at this init reference issue. So we were figuring out our zero fuel weight at 225.6 is correct. Gross weight 294 is absolutely correct. And we are trying to put in reserve fuels of 10 metric tons, which is accurate according to the flight plan. And I'm just going to bring that up here on my screen on the other side. So completely correct to the flight plan, but the problem is if we look at the navigation display, we can actually look at the plan. If we go up here in the plan mode, which I'm in, and I've zoomed out quite a ways, you can see if we look at the legs, we can step through this particular plan. So as we step through, we've got a couple of problems. So we've got this vector to disconnect. We need to reconnect up with our flight plan. We've got a disconnect here between the OOD waypoint and the next waypoint after that. So I'm going to step through just a little bit more. So now we're at the Ross. Here's OOD. So we have a disconnect between OOD and Davies. And the way we would actually see that is if we went to route. Remember, we were looking at the actual entry points. We would see a disconnect between OOD right here and Davies, and it shows the route discontinuity. And basically what we want to tell it is we're going to go direct from OOD according to our flight plan. And let me just go back to that one section. We're going to go direct from OOD to Davies, even though that's not specifically spelled out in our flight plan. Visually that makes perfect sense. So all we need to do here is just clear this warning about the insufficient fuel. Click on Davies, puts it in a scratch pad, and we're going to drop it in up here as our direct. So from OOD, direct to Davies, yes, we're going to execute that. And that connects this magenta line here. So now we have a connection between OOD and Davies. But that's still not our insufficient fuel issue. As you see, I'm still getting the insufficient fuel. And that was throwing me off. I'm like, what in the world is going on? So go back to our legs, and we'll step through this one more time. We're going to step forward through all of our waypoints. So at Boston, ENE, here's where we're going across the ocean, and then 5120N, all of a sudden, look at this one here. So these waypoints between going across the ocean, 378 nautical miles to 5240N, 369 nautical miles, 378, all of a sudden, there's this waypoint, DININ, which is 1,132 nautical miles. That's completely unexpected, which is why we have such this hard corner here in our flight plan and in our display of the flight plan. And that's because this waypoint is not accurate. It needs to be DINIM. So we want to make a correction to that waypoint. To do that, we need to go back to route. Go to our part of the flight plan where that waypoint is entered, and here it is, direct to DININ. We want to change that to be DINIM as in Mary. Drop that in right there. So now we have this correction to our flight plan. We're going to execute that, and hopefully that's going to clear us up. Let me go and just take a look. For this DININ, we want to take it out of the equation. So we should be able to do a delete. Clear the insufficient fuel. Have our delete selected. And clear this one. Now that's gone. I'm going to execute that change. We still have this flight discontinuity. So between DINIM, we are direct to ELSOX. Previous page. DINIM, next page ELSOX. What we want to do is select that one as well and say we're going to go direct to it. Now this looks correct. Execute one more time, and that should clear us up. Go back and take a look at our route one more time. Scroll through here. Looks like everything is correct. Looks good. We go to legs now. From legs, we should be able to step through our flight plan once again. Everything appears to be connected. Here we're crossing the ocean. Everything appears to be correct. Coming into our last waypoint before arriving at the airport. Now let's go back and see if we get the fuel notification. So we'll go back to performance. Numbers are correct. 68.4 metric tons of fuel on board. We have 10 reserves, and I'm no longer receiving insufficient fuel. So we've got that taken care of. A little bit of a delay there, but we've got it worked out. We had to work through it. We can't ignore those things because that would have certainly thrown us off if we were heading in the wrong direction. ATC would have been yelling at us and yada, yada, yada. It would have been a mess in flight. So now we're squared away there. Try and get back on track here and get prepared for takeoff. Alright, so with this page complete, we want to now move on to the next performance tab, which is going to be our thrust limit for today's flight. So we have an outside air temperature of 26 degrees centigrade, and we want to do a D-rated takeoff. It was raining earlier, so we're going to configure for a flaps 15 takeoff on this particular runway. Runway 28 is 3,200 meter, approximately 10,503 feet long, and under wet conditions, looking at the charts in the documentation, I think we can do a safe assumed temperature of 46 degrees centigrade, so that's what we're going to drop in here. 46 degrees. And that's going to give us slightly derated, not by a whole lot. You know, on a dry runway, this could go a little higher to 50, and even probably slightly higher than that, but I honestly, I don't have that formula quite worked out 100% yet. I've got a system that I'm using that's, I feel like, getting me fairly close. So this looks good. I'm comfortable with this. We want to go to our takeoff settings now. We are doing a flaps 15 takeoff, so we get that set up. And we want to recall our center of gravity. That was on our payload based off the cargo and passengers, and that's coming in at 26.3. So once we drop that in, we should get our V speeds, our V1, VR, and V2. These look to be pretty good, so I want to make note of those for our takeoff. So V1 at 157, our rotate VR 163, and then our 169 for V2. And we want to click these and just enable them for the speed tape, so everything is good to go there. Looks good. Now we are pretty close to finishing up. In fact, that pretty much does it with that last little step there. We can go back to legs, and our FMC is now programmed. We want to go back up top to the MCP and just get it ready for takeoff. So our V2 speed was 169. We're going to go ahead and set the MCP to 169. Our runway heading, so we're taking off in 28. 28 is going to have, looks like a 285 degrees, so we're going to drop in 285. We can adjust that once we get close to the runway. 285 is our heading from the runway. We've already got 8,000 feet programmed as our potential clearance for initial altitude. We want to activate our arm, I should say, our LNAV and our VNAV. So LNAV and VNAV are now armed, ready to go. Last little quick checks from the first officer side. We're just checking landing gear, gear override, ground proximity. All of these switches should be in the off position. Everything is normal. Since we are getting ready for takeoff, we can go ahead and put the auto brake down into RTO, which is for rejected takeoff in case we have to stop abruptly. And we're getting pretty close to our pushback, so what I'm going to do right now with everybody on board, I'm going to go ahead and get the APU started up. So APU to on position, we're going to hold it to start, let it start to initialize. As soon as that's powered up and ready to go, we'll disconnect the ground power from the aircraft. We can kind of monitor its progress over here from the ECAS page. She's firing up right now. Get our radar turned on for today's flight. We're just going down here to the weather and putting on the weather and turbulence. The auto is already configured so that our tilt is automatically configured for us. Go ahead and pop this weather screen on. No weather to speak of right now, worth noting, being displayed on the navigation display. Transponder is in standby. Double check that. Actually, it's not in standby. I'll bring that back to standby. don't have a transponder code yet.
TCAS test pass.
And I inadvertently pressed the test button, so TCAS passed. So APU is good to go. Go back here to the overhead console. We're going to drop our external power. We'll now run off with APU power. Our left and right packs are on auto, so we should be bleeding from the APU. No longer need the ground power or the air conditioning connected. Down and make those changes real quick. But we'll confirm that before I assume that that stuff is working. So we'll just spot check the air, and we can see that the APU is providing bleed air and controlling the temperature inside both the flight deck and the cabin. So good there. And if we take a quick look at the electrical page as well, we can see that electric is now being provided by the APU, which transfer APU generators up top here, so through the bus ties right main. So we have power going to the plane. We can disconnect the primary external power and secondary external power. We can do that from ground actions over here, or ground connections. Disconnect the air conditioning, disconnect the ground power. So we should be good to go there. We can see that those are no longer green for power. Just spot check our controls. So speed brake is off, throttle and reversers are in the correct position, flaps are off. We're going to go and put our parking brake back on again. That looks good. Our alternate flaps is currently not armed, which is perfect, and they're off, so no change there. And at this point we can call our pre-flight checklist, so we'll take a quick spot check at that. Back over here to checklists. We need to take a look at the pre-flight one. Pre-flight oxygen has already been tested and checked. Flight instruments, heading, and altimeter are currently set and good to go. Parking brake is on. Fuel control switches are off. Correct. So off of this one. Verify. I think we closed up our exterior doors with everybody on board already. We can do a quick check of those from our right CPU. Doors are all on. Everything's closed. No notifications there. Go ahead and get our hydraulics turned on now that we have the APU providing power to the aircraft. So right electric is on. We're going to fire up the center 1 and center 2 electric. Turn on the left electric as well to auto. Let those fault lights go out. And then we're going to turn on our air for the center hydraulic system as well. So that should be good. For fuel, we'll just spot check our fuel tank real quick, see what kind of fuel load we have in the center tank. We do have a little bit of fuel. It's in the yellow position, but we're going to go ahead and turn that on. Already, oh, there we go. Yeah, it's clear enough. So we're just about ready for pushback. We've got our APU started up. We're going to go ahead and get our beacon going. Just let the ground crew know that we'll be starting the engines here momentarily. Now with our hydraulics on, we can go ahead and get our trim set up real quick. Back to the right display. Flight controls, we want to bring trim to 5.75. Wrong direction there. So 5.75, we've shown our trim indicator up here, as well as the trim indication here on the side of the pedestal. So 5.75. So at this point, we're ready to do our start checklist. We're going to assume flight deck doors closed and locked. Good to go. We have put our V2 speed, heading, track, and altitude into the MCP as far as we know it right now. We've got notes of our V1VR, V2 speed. CDU for pre-flight configuration is complete. Trim has been set. Taxi and takeoff briefing is complete. We are ready to go on. And at this point, we want to call for pushback. So everything's locked up. Control 12. Now before I call for pushback, I'm getting quite ahead of myself. Let's jump outside, take a quick look at how the plane is oriented. And actually, I'm almost forgetting a step here. We need to file our IFR
Baltimore
clearance.
clearance delivery. Air France 3829er Heavy, ready to copy IFR clearance to de Gaulle. Air France 3829er Heavy is cleared to de Gaulle Airport. Is filed. Fly runway heading, climate maintain 900 south. Departure frequency is 119.0. Squawk 1334. Air France 3829er Heavy, cleared at de Gaulle Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 900,000. Departure at 119.0, squawk 1334. Air France 3829er Heavy, readback is correct. Contact ground on 121.9 when ready to taxi.
So we got our initial altitude clearance for 9,000 feet. We got our transponder code 1334. Verify that's been programmed in. 1334. It has been. We're going to go to expander position. And now we're going to request taxi.
Baltimore ground. Air France 3829er Heavy, with Quebec, ready to taxi IFR. Air France 3829er Heavy, taxi to and hold short of runway 28 using taxiway Juliet, Juliet, Bravo, November, Bravo, Victor. Contact tower on 119.4 when ready. Taxi, hold short runway 28. Via taxiway Juliet, Juliet, Bravo, November, Bravo, Victor. Air France 3829er Heavy.
So we want to back up. We're going to do, looks like nose to the left, tail to the right. Start our pushback request now that we have our clearance to taxi. What do we say? Tail right, nose left. Not going to start the engine before I push back. So we'll let them get into position. We'll spot check our checklist. So we are just about to start the engines up as soon as we get clearance from the ground crew. Now before they can move us, we've got to go and get rid of the cones and the wheel chocks.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback. Locking gear. Departure check completed. Bypass pin inserted. Release parking brakes. Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
We're starting our pushback. We're going to go and get our engine started up. Starting right engine.
Baltimore ground. World travel 1828. Request taxi to the gate. World travel 1828. Taxi to gate Delta 25 using taxiway 5.
little hard to see. Everything appears to be good to go. Parameters are stabilized. Starting left engine. Jump up here, go ahead and put our anti-ice into the auto position. Our flap setting for takeoff are going to be flaps 15, or flaps 15. We're almost in position. I'm going to go ahead and stop them right there.
Set parking brakes.
Engines are started up. We want to check our flight controls. Jump over here to flight controls real quick.
Baltimore ground. World travel 90561, taxi to the gate.
Right.
World travel 90561, taxi to gate Delta 1, using taxiway Papa Alpha Bravo, runway 4 Kilo Sierra, November.
Unlocking gear.
Taxiing to gate Delta 1,
Right.
using taxiway Papa Alpha Bravo, runway 4
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
November. World travel 90561. World travel 182 deep, hold position, caution other traffic. Hold position, world travel 182 deep.
Alright, so we're cleared by ground services. Now we want to do our before taxi checklist. Pop that up on the display here. We turned our anti-ice on, that is good. Do a quick cancel recall check of our status messages. We can see that we only have 2 current messages. TCAS is off. That's what we expected at the time, at this point in time. And our display select panel is disabled because we're controlling it from the right CPU. So that is fine. Nothing unexpected there. Flight controls have been checked. Ground equipment is clear. We are good to go. We can't very well taxi without having our taxi light switches on. So I do see those steps here. I want to jump to the overhead console real quick and make sure we turn on our taxi light. Turn on our taxi turn lights. Now we should be able to see a little better outside the aircraft. That's a little better. A little bit of light. So now we'll release the parking brake and we'll start to get going here on our taxi. As soon as the plane starts to roll, we do a quick brake check. Brake check. Go. Continue on with our taxi. So it's 3:38. We're leaving 38 minutes behind schedule. Our pushback will supposed to start to occur at 0300 Zulu time. We were a little bit after that. We'll say 0330, start of our block time. Commencing our taxi to our runway 28. Unfortunately, I recall looking at the flight plan, looks like we are going to have a tailwind across the ocean. So we should actually arrive still ahead of schedule, even though we were getting a 30-minute late departure. I think we'll be able to make up that time en route. That's the plan, anyway. Speed. Make sure we don't overshoot 10 knots in some of these sharp corners.
World travel 1828, continue taxi. Roger, world travel 1828.
So recall I said we've got active sky on this flight, so the weather is fully dynamic. We should have different weather patterns for our entire trip up the East Coast towards Maine and across the ocean on our way to Paris. And speaking of weather, if you look at the green bar up above, you can see that the weather is just updated again. Nothing for us to see right now. But the clouds should certainly be different as we fly through them on our journey. So we're taxiing a little bit slow here. Let me get the speed up. We are talking ground, so we're good to go.
Approaching 2-2.
Have any guidance from ground control to stop, we're going to go ahead and cross this runway. It is awfully dark out there tonight, but skies look a little clearer, at least off into this direction. See a couple of stars up there in the sky.
Approaching 2-8.
So it looks like 2-8's got a bit of an interesting taxiway entry. We're going to kind of loop around here, if I recall from looking at the airport's layout. almost like a New Jersey jug handle. So here's the threshold for 28.
Approaching 28.
We're going to go ahead and hold up here. Get ourselves situated for takeoff. Just a couple things to do. We want to get our takeoff lights turned on, the landing lights to on position. We do want to get our strobe on. We're right next to the runway. And I want to get my dome light turned off. Probably should have turned that off before we started on our way here. That looks a little better. Jump down and get our TCAS situated. Transponder turned on, so TCAS is enabled. Everything else looks good. We've got our rejected takeoff configured. V-speeds are programmed. At this point, we just want to get clearance for takeoff.
Baltimore Tower, Air France 3829er Heavy, ready for IFR departure, runway 28. Air France 3829er Heavy, cleared for takeoff, runway 28. Cleared for takeoff, runway 28. Air France 3829er Heavy.
We're cleared to take off. We're going to get out onto the runway and get into position.
On runway 28.
So we're going to set up here for pretty much a static takeoff. Runway heading, looks like we've got it pretty much accurate. Coming around to 286, 285. Looks to be pretty good. We're going to do a static takeoff. V-speeds, just a quick double check. So 157 is our abort, 163 rotate, 169 is our climb speed, minimum. Transponder's good to go. Everything looks good. We're going to spool up the engines to about 55% N1. Release the brake. We're going to go ahead and click our clock. Go to toga. Slight down on the stick until we get to 80 knots. Come up even. Keep ourselves a little more center of the runway here. Build up speed. Approaching V1.
V1. Rotate.
Rotate.
V2.
We're off the runway. Positive climb. Gear up. Keep our eye on the flight director indicators. Make sure we're still maintaining and controlling our climb. Bring in the flaps 1
Air
position.
France 3829er Heavy, contact Tacoma departure on 119.0. 119.0 for Air France 3829er Heavy. Departure Air France 3829er Heavy
Monitoring
is
our
at
speed.
1,900, climbing 9,000. Air France 3829er
director's got us turning here left, which is expected.
Air France 3829 heavy. Turn
Come
left
back our
heading
flaps 1 more.
105. Resume on navigation. Climb and maintain 9,000.
Okay, so that was a little bit of a pause. We're continuing to follow flight director, banking around here to the left. We're going to get back on our vector course before we start to...
Turn left heading 105. Resume on navigation. Climb and maintain 9,000. Air France 3829 heavy. Air France 3829 heavy. Contact select departure on 119.7. 119.7. Air France 3829 heavy.
Out, flaps back. More.
Incoming departure Air France 3829 heavy is at 3,200. Climbing 9,000. Air France 3829 heavy. Incoming departure Roger. Altimeter 2979.
At this point, I'm going to engage the autopilot.
080. Turn left heading 080. Air France 3829 heavy.
Back around, and we're going to engage we're going to actually head for Swan. It looks like that's the direction it's starting to take us. We're going to resume our own navigation. No, they're telling us to turn.
Air France 3829 heavy. Contact incoming departure on 119.0.
Okay. Acknowledge our handoff.
119.0. Air France 3829 heavy. Incoming departure Air France 3829 heavy is climbing to 6,900 for 9,000. Air France 3829 heavy. Incoming departure Roger. Altimeter 2976.
Now, interesting, we have a warning here that we have insufficient fuel, which certainly shouldn't be the case with the fuel that we have on board.
Air France 3829 heavy. Contact Washington Center on 132.55. Going at 132.55. Air France 3829 heavy. Incoming departure Air France 3829 heavy. With you 8,900. Air France 3829 heavy. Incoming departure Roger. Altimeter 2977. Air France 3829 heavy. Climb and maintain 15,000. Climb and maintain 15,000. Air France 3829 heavy. Air France 3829 heavy. Contact Washington Center on 132.55. 132.55 for Air France 3829 heavy.
So we're doing a bunch of handoffs here, monitoring our flight, climbing 15,000 feet. Going to attempt to redirect to our flight plan. We've got a waypoint coming up here of Swan, and that's what I want to go to. So, there's what we're looking for. So now we get our clearance right to 105. That's going to turn us towards Swan, which is perfect.
Turn right heading 105. Resume on navigation. Air France 3829 heavy.
So now Swan is our next waypoint, which is what we're flying for. Perfect. And we're going to engage our lateral navigation as well. And looky, we've got some weather. Very interesting. I love this. So with active sky, we finally get some weather hits on our radar as we climb through our assigned altitude right now, 15,000 feet. Looks like there's some rough weather up there. And we're going to be turning right into something. This is kind of new to me. I'm going to kind of monitor this, and we'll see what it really does to the aircraft. Jump outside here and take a look. Wow, did you see the lightning strikes out there? Caught just a glimpse of that a moment ago. A little hard to see. We're up through 10,000 feet. I can see that our landing lights are still on, so we want to go back into the cockpit. Turn those off. The landing gear up. We don't need our taxi lights on anymore. We're approaching 15,000 feet, our assigned altitude. That was cool. Some of the lightning strikes out there. Keep catching just little glimpses of it. Getting ready to fly into some thick clouds. Down there, about 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Some flashes of lightning going on in the clouds. Storms off to our right. Spot check our checklist. We want to do our after takeoff checklist. So we'll go back into the cockpit here real quick. Make sure that we're on top of the things that we need to do.
Altimeter setting.
Altimeter setting. We just climbed through transition altitude of 18,000 feet. And that's the first time I've heard it alert us to the altimeter setting. So we want to go to standard now that we're above 18,000 feet. Back to our checklist real quick. This is before takeoff, we were good to go, flaps 15, so we missed a checklist item. So that's good to go. Landing gear's up, flaps are up. That is fine. not ready for descent yet, so we can take that off. We'll go back to our engine display. Got some flashes of lightning from outside. Excellent. Some pretty thick clouds here we're flying into. We do have a fuel low center. We want to go up and change our center fuel tank, turn those pumps off to clear that message. I really don't like this insufficient fuel warning. That really should not be the case according to my flight plan. I'm going to jump down, go back to our FMC, see that it has cleared now. No, I'm still getting insufficient fuel. Let's just take a quick look here. Insufficient fuel. $62.9. We have reserves programmed in at 10. Says that when we get to destination of LFPG, our expected fuel is going to be 10. So if we're getting insufficient fuel because we're reaching our reserve fuel amount that we set to be 10. Of that reserve setting of 10 tons of fuel, which is quite a bit of fuel, the flight plan indicates that I have 5.4 tons of fuel for my alternate airport, and then I have 45 minutes of extra fuel in case I go into a hold pattern or I have to do a go-around. So we're really close. I mean, we're just on the cusp. I don't think it's going to let me change that, but I'm not too concerned about running out of fuel. We're probably a little tighter than anticipated that we would be, probably because I sat there a little bit longer messing with the flight management computer than was really expected. Go back to my reference here to performance. Reserves is set to 10. I don't know if it'll let us change that. So with 9, go back and look at our programming. We're coming in at 10, so that should eliminate the insufficient fuel notification. Probably not the right way to handle that in real life, but hey, this is a flight simulator. Rather not have a warning the entire flight indicating insufficient fuel. So insufficient fuel is gone. That looks good. Back to our legs page and monitor our progress. Our next waypoint is Davies. Cool to see some weather on the screen. We did get rid of the insufficient fuel. So we're looking pretty good right now. Let's go back outside and just see what's going on. Continuing our climb through these storm systems. Got some lightning going on below us. looking pretty good. 33, flight level 330 at 33,000 feet is our cruise altitude. So at cruise, now we've got a little bit of ways to go. If you take a look at our flight path, we'll take a quick look at the map. You can see we are flying up the East Coast. So from BWI, heading up the East Coast quite a ways before we start our journey across the ocean. So we're going to continue to track our progress. I'm going to speed this flight along, and once morning light starts to come about, come back and show you our progress, and then we'll probably jump forward again as we get closer to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, France, and complete this journey. But thank you so much for watching. I am Liam Locke. I'm glad you came to Liam Locke Gaming to check out some of my flights. I'm getting pumped for the new Flight Simulator 2020 that's going to be coming out. Checking out those videos. We got active sky going on right here right now, so we got some live weather. Very cool. And also I picked up, as I told you, the Boeing 747. So I'm going to start my training on the 747 and take that for a spin. So look forward for a flight in that plane as well, coming up real soon. But we'll be back here shortly. Thanks for watching.